A strong wind lifted the book off the pedestal and out of my reach. I watched as it flew to and landed in Heimos' hand. Is rifling through someone's things a new cultural trait? He frowned at me, waiting for my answer. Sorry. Book pretty. Want to touch book. Exhaustion, dehydration, and hunger also made me feel weaker. I can't move any further. It felt bad to admit out loud, but it was the truth. The bead remained dark for some time. Then it glowed, and I felt Heimos' presence once more. The snow beneath me began to shift. I watched in fascination as a horse of stone rose under me. I squeaked in surprise and would have fallen off of it if it weren't for roots holding my legs in place. The earth elemental let out a grinding noise that mimicked the neigh of a horse. Amazing. I ran my hand along its neck, marveling at the way it vibrated. If it weren't for the fact that it was made of stone, I might have thought it was a real horse in the dark. Once I was situated, it began to trot casually through the snow. With a small pop and surge of energy, flames began to pop into existence around me. They hovered nearby, slowly warming me up. You're doing a lot of this for a stranger, Heimos. I let out a sigh of relief. The stone horse moved much, much faster than I had. Being an entity of pure elemental power, it didn't need to rest either. It was slightly comical how much ground the beast could cover compared to my awkward shuffling. I wondered why Heimos didn't just start with this. At least I didn't have to navigate in the dark. I had no lantern, no torch. Stumbling around out here would probably send me face first into one of the black trees. The terrain grew harsher and harsher the further up the mountain we journeyed. I could feel my body angling awkwardly with the shift. I doubted I would have been able to make this climb on my own. I patted the horse's neck in thanks. After a ride long enough to make my legs ache, the ground began to flatten to a gentle incline. The mouth of a cave rested on the mountainside. Soft runes glowed faintly with power, and despite the constant snow, the stone floors within were exposed. The horse beneath me began to crumble. Gently, I was slid off its back and onto my feet once more. I could hear the sounds of the ravens nearby. One landed on my shoulder. Awkwardly, I shifted in the darkness. I wondered if I should call out to him. Moment. I looked at the raven in confusion. That made no sense. None of the other ravens added to it, meaning I wasn't sure what to do. In the end, I only had two options. I think I will wait. It seems like it's telling me to wait. It seemed too rude to demand his immediate attention. A living god probably had other things to do besides babysitting some random human. I tucked my arms under my armpits and waited. Soon, small bits of light began to light up in the dark. I heard the sound of bare feet walking on stone. Finally, a pale foot appeared in the moonlight. Pretty! Beautiful silver-white curls poured over thin shoulders. Bits of ice froze some at the ends, and the glint of golden beads poked out here and there. Two braids lined with gold thread framed a sharp face. A crown of ice only made him seem even taller. Unnaturally blue eyes stared at me, unblinking. His white lashes were covered in frost, and parts of his skin were blue with the cold. He didn't seem bothered by it in the slightest. Light violet lips pulled into a thin line while he examined me. He had to slouch slightly to avoid hitting his head on the roof of the cave. The people of Mordawal were said to be descendants of giants, and seeing how he towered over me, I thought it to be true. As he observed me, he untucked his hands from his sleeves. One was normal, albeit covered in frost and tinted light blue. He chewed his nails. It was a very human quirk. The other hand didn't even look human. It appeared to be made out of ice and warped black branches. It was still hand-shaped, but its fingers ended in sharp claws. The inhuman hand was quickly tucked out of sight behind him. "Thank you for your patience." Heimos gave me a slight bow. Something had come up that required immediate total attention. "It's okay. It happens." "Still, I apologize. It was a rude thing to do to a guest." Heimos straightened up and looked me up and down. "Come inside. You are very weak." Heimos gestured for me to join him. I eagerly walked up to him. If he was startled by my behavior, he didn't show it. We entered the dark hallway of the cave. Heimos kept pace with me despite his long legs. His human hand hovered awkwardly in the air along my upper back. I could tell he planned on grabbing me if I fell. It was comforting to know I wouldn't slam face first into the stone floor. I wonder what kind of place a living god would dwell in. Would it be a vast temple carved from stone? Maybe it would be some mystical gathering of arcane energy. It might very well be a frozen-over wasteland devoid of human comforts. As the light at the end of the tunnel grew brighter, my questions were answered. The main antechamber we entered was cozy. Simple furniture rested in front of a blazing hearth. The room was round, and the walls were obviously carved cave walls. A few tapestries hung here and there, and a few documents were also stuck to the walls. Books were scattered about on the floor, too. A mixture of dark hallways and closed doors dotted the walls. To my surprise, it was warm in here. I stared at the surprisingly mundane and human-like abode. Expecting something different? A bit. I tried my best to not sound as surprised as I felt. I prefer mortal comforts like anyone else. Heimos gestured to the cushioned bench. Take off your outer layers and settle there after leaving your clothes near the fire. You're soaked through in some places. Heimos eyed me up and down. Nothing I have will fit you easily, but I can modify something. Of course nothing would fit me easily. He was a mordehuelo and easily 7 feet tall. Are you able to move your hands enough to deal with buttons? I think so. Just being near the fire was making my hands feel alive again. Very well. Let me know if you have trouble. Heimos drifted into one of the doors and left me to my own devices. I managed to get my fingers warm enough to start taking off my outer layers. While they had been a blessing outside, they were practically suffocating now. My shuddering slowly began to calm down and pass. Nausea and a headache remained. The mark on my back pulled and ached. I pressed my fingers to my wrist, reveling in my pulse, fast and nervous. Heimos still wasn't back from the room he entered. Perhaps I could use this time to look around. Sure, let's look around. I moved around the main room, examining the scattered books and papers. Most of them appeared to be medical documents of some kind. The documents were in a surprisingly variety of languages. Some were diagrams of people and plants. Others appeared to be essays of some kind. The books I found were similarly all focused on medicine. Everything was covered in tight notes and minor corrections. Well, I assumed the words heavily crossed out with angry-looking text near them were corrections. Once I grew bored of examining the papers, I began to poke around the other hallways. Most were pitch black with only a few clusters of light gathering near the floor. I didn't have anything to light my way, so I decided not to venture too deep into them. Eventually, I strayed towards the door opposite the one Heimos went into. It opened to reveal a library. The circular room wrapped around a pillar of ice that rested on a blanket of odd-looking flowers and grass. When I approached the grass, I could feel the energy radiating from it. If the main room felt cozy, this place felt magical. The arcane energy in the air made my teeth buzz. I walked around the library and noticed a pedestal behind the pillar of ice. A giant tome rested on top of it. The tome was bursting at the seams and only held together with leather thread. Papers had been shoved into it as well. The stains and wear on it showed constant use. I approached it to take a look. My hand reached out to touch it. A strong wind lifted the book off the pedestal and out of my reach. I watched as it flew to and landed in Heimos' hand. Is rifling through someone's things a new cultural trait? He frowned at me, waiting for my answer. Sorry. Book pretty. Want to touch book. I got too excited. Excited? Well, I mean, this is a place of legend. I gestured around. So, I shrugged. Even if that is the case, refrain from tearing through my house. He held up the book. And do not touch this. At all. Understood. Sorry. I will forgive it once. Come back to the main room. We have more important things to discuss. He gestured for me to leave while going to return the book to its place. Heimos had laid out a simple, mortar-wall-style furred robe for me. Oh. It had been cut in places to make it fit my frame better, but it ruined the beautiful embroidery on the top layer. This should fit. You can wear it while your clothes are tended to. Thank you. Wow. I held the small piece of history in my hands and stared at it. It's just a common robe. He looked at my outfit. Though fashion seems to have changed in Mortarwall, how do you not cause aura fry with no thinner layers between the thicker ones? Aura fry? Heimos looked at me like I had asked the stupid question. Aura fry is when your runes cross and entangled. It can burn layers. He held up his sleeve and revealed the many layers. I saw that some layers did indeed have runes on them. Actually, he picked up my coat. Where are your runes? No wonder you look so miserable in the cold. Rune embroidery died with Mortarwall, if I remember correctly. The light in the room dimmed. Heimos straightened to his full height. A single blue eye looked down at me from over his shoulder. What? We don't know how to do rune embroidery? Heimos turned. Not that part. About Mortarwall. They died? I didn't think it would be possible for him to get paler. He took a half step back, balanced unsteady for a moment. Then he sat down on the bench in front of the fire and took a slow breath. Were you actually a Mortarwallo? Scholars theorized he was, due to where his prison was. Technically, though, he could have been from anywhere on the continent. I am a Mortarwallo. His correction came out in a tight voice. The last one, apparently. His face remained impassive, but I could see his mind racing. I am wondering, how do you not know your people are extinct? But then again, I don't want him to feel bad. I'm sorry. Do you want a hug? I can hug your knees if that's how tall I come up to you. I thought you knew. I didn't. Heimos paused and took a moment to collect himself. Irrelevant. I'm getting sidetracked when you're dying. He shook his head and looked at me. Show me the curse mark. I need to see what can be done about it. That makes sense. I stood up from the bench and turned around. My shirt slid up my back easily to reveal the mark in question.
Step a bit closer to me. I can't see the mark.
Would it be easier if you stood?
Harder due to the height difference. Just come here.
I stepped a bit closer, uncomfortable at the proximity. Heimos examined the mark while making a few notes.
All right, I'm done.
He nudged for me to step away from him. I did so and let my shirt fall back down. I turned to face him. He used his quill to gesture to the door he went into earlier.
Technically, that is my bedroom. I do not, however, have a guest room, so for now it will be yours. You can go change in there.
Where will you sleep then?
My library, or here.
He shrugged.
I rarely sleep to begin with.
Do you need sleep?
No. I need time to think.
He gestured to his notes.
So, off with you.
I went to the room to change. It was a simple room with simple furniture. Like everywhere else, papers and books were scattered around. A small hearth burnt in one corner of the room to keep it warm. I enjoyed that warmth while changing into my borrowed clothes. It hung awkwardly in places, but was dry, light, and cozy. My fingers strayed across the embroidered underlayers curiously. No one in the Empire knew how to make runes out of thread. If we could, it would make survival easier in Andatal. It made me wonder just how many miracles were stored in this place. Heimos had hundreds of years to gather powerful items and knowledge. He was practically hoarding it. Some part of me wondered if he had the right to do that. What was the point in gathering all this information for himself? It could do so much good in the right hands. I could do so much good if I got my hands on some of it. No. I dismissed the thought immediately. Bad enough I make this guy make a horse out of stone and talk to birds just to get my sick butt up here. Then thinking about stealing his stuff that he probably stole. I was making too many assumptions. For one, I didn't know if he never sent out information. Some stories did tell of ravens carrying cures after all. Beyond that, who knew just how dangerous some of this stuff could be? Just because it might do good in some hands doesn't mean everyone would use it for good. Besides that, I didn't like where the line of thought was going. Trying to steal from Heimos resulted in tragedy every time. I wasn't eager to join the fables as another example of human arrogance.
Human?
Heimos' voice interrupted my thinking. I had partially closed the door, but he could have easily just opened it. Instead, he waited. I'm decent. Heimos entered then. He looked me up and down. What?
It appears to fit well. I was worried it would drag.
I looked down at the hem by my feet. No, it's fine. I can walk comfortably.
Good. Use it while your clothing is being mended.
Are you going to mend them?
Yes. The ice on Mount Gelus has caused the material to degrade unnaturally. I will need to correct it.
All right, then. So, what about my condition?
I hate to say it, but you're in a bad spot.
I knew that already.
Take whatever your idea of bad is and worsen it tenfold.
I frowned and sat down on the edge of the bed. That bad?
Yes, that bad. The good news is that it is not divine retribution, so I can help you.
I sighed in relief.
The bad news is that the window for the easiest solution has passed.
Easiest solution?
Yes, there was a solution as simple as pulling it out.
Why can't you do that now?
It will kill you.
What can we do then?
The standard cure.
A blessing?
A panacea, though I can see how priests might call them blessings. Panaceas are made by slowly condensing pure energy from the person in question. I really hope I'm pronouncing panaceas correctly, because while I was playing Final Fantasy and other games like that, I always pronounced it wrong. This process takes time, but it is fully capable of purging the curse mark. It will also not kill the recipient or leave them permanently maimed afterward.
Maimed?
The process can leave a hole into your soul, causing permanent disability or injury as a result. The panacea heals this hole that cannot heal itself, avoiding that problem.
I see. Do you have a panacea?
That is a small problem. I can make a panacea. It will take just more time.
How much time? I didn't have much time left with the mark complete.
Up to a month.
I gaped at him. I'll be dead before then.
No, you won't. I can keep you alive during the process. I can also give you medicine to make being alive during it not so miserable. You can survive this.
I sat on the offer for a few moments.
It's your only option. You won't survive the trek to wherever you are going.
You're sure you can keep me alive?
I have saved people going through far worse.
I thought about it a bit longer. Well, I don't have much of a choice. Not really.
No, you don't.
All right. Thank you, Heimos.
It is my duty. What is your name?
Oh, I'm Espoir.
Espoir.
Heimos repeated with a nod. It was a bit strange hearing my name come from him.
Good. You should go rest. I will bring you some food to eat first, but you can get comfortable. But first, come here.
Heimos held out his inhuman hand. I stared at it for a second before stepping towards it. The cool tip of one of his claws pressed against my forehead. I could feel a cool sensation wrap around my head twice. With a faint burn, something was engraved onto my forehead.
To make sure you don't die.
Heimos pulled his hand back. I reached up to touch it, but I couldn't feel any kind of mark. All that lingered was the mild chill that had settled into my skull.
I've got a rough idea of your condition. I will add medication to your food as well. That way, when the symptoms begin to worsen, it won't be as bad. If you take the medicine. Refuse it, and you will suffer. Understand?
I do.
Good.
Heimos turned and left the room then. My time at the Sacrarium had begun. Week 1. Heimos proved to be true to his word. He brought me a mixture of food and medicine before I drifted off. When I woke up later, I was still in his room, still alive. The curse mark continued to wake, but my other symptoms were calmer. I felt well enough to even eat the collection of fruits and vegetables left from me. My hand strayed up to my forehead. It no longer burned, but I could feel the faint presence of something sticking there. Not physically, more like I felt it in my soul. I felt slightly chilly as a result. What did he do to me? My curiosity helped give me the strength to get out of bed. Heimos was nowhere to be seen in the main antechamber. The door to the library hung slightly open. Heimos hadn't seemed pleased the last time I went in there. Yes, maybe we shouldn't do that. I hesitated at the entryway, wondering if I should knock. He also used this place as a makeshift bedroom due to my being here. Awkwardly, I knocked on the door.
Enter.
Hey, buddy. Heimos was in the back of the room, hunched over a desk and examining something under a magnifying glass. He didn't look up at me at all as I approached.
One moment.
I decided to let my eyes wander a bit. The giant pillar of ice in the library felt so out of place. It should have been making this place freezing cold, but the air remained cozy. I watched as streaks of energy moved through the ice, chasing streaks of black smoke.
There.
Heimos put some tools down and turned to look at me. I had pulled my eyes away to meet his gaze.
What did you need?
What did you do to me? Why does my forehead feel all cold and chilly?
In what sense?
I pointed to my forehead.
A spell.
I gathered that much.
What else would you want to know then?
More about what it does.
It prevents the curse mark from killing you by suspending your body in time.
Oh, you could just do that? Okay. Suspending my body in time? Am I immortal?
No, you aren't. Your body is just on pause.
That sounds like I'm immortal.
Time stopping does not mean invulnerability.
Yeah, so if I fall down the stairs and break my foot, it's still gonna hurt. I just won't age.
True immortality also includes the fact you can't die to injury. Right now, you are just frozen at a point in time where the disease is stuck in place.
That's why I feel cold?
Yes.
Oh. Does this mean I won't age?
Yes.
I marveled at my own body for a moment. I didn't feel much different, but I definitely was.
I needed to do it, or your body would constantly fluctuate with random symptoms. This will calm that problem down and prevent the disease from progressing further.
Does it take a lot of energy?
For me, no. For a mortal mage, they'd be dead before the end of the first hour.
Ooh. Heimos shrugged, just nonchalantly dropping that.
That's it.
So that's why he was so confident I would be fine. I see.
It is my duty to heal the sick. If that is all...
Heimos moved to turn back to his work. I have another question. Heimos hesitated for a second before turning back around.
What is it?
Do you know how I got cursed? Yeah, that would be important.
Off the top of my head, no.
Could we figure it out?
Yes. There are only so many ways for it to occur. First of all, it isn't divine retribution.
How do you know that?
The shape is wrong. Divine retribution always bears the shape of the god or goddess who gave it to you. Simple circles belong to devils.
I see. What's after that?
Deals with devils. You don't seem to be the type, though.
I'm not.
Not that. Did you buy anything new recently? It could be something very plain. A new brush or a new pair of boots.
No, I haven't needed to.
Not a cursed object, then. All that is left is a grudge.
A grudge? I mean, there was the whole thing with my parents.
Some human souls can taint the living in a way similar to devils after death. This tainting process makes curse marks. Has anyone important to you died recently? Family? A lover?
I thought about it. Death wasn't an uncommon thing in Andatal in general. Someone close to me, though. No, not that I know of. I amended that statement when my heart twisted in the thought of Edith.
That you know of?
It wouldn't be related to this. When I was cast out, an older friend of mine tried to defend me. The priest ordered an exorcism.
Ah, the barbaric rituals of the Southern Church.
Heimos recognized the problem immediately.
She's older.
Yeah. Heimos gave me a sympathetic look.
I apologize.
Nothing to apologize for.
She might have survived if she's stubborn enough.
He was trying to cheer me up in his own stilted way. She is the stubborn type. I forced the thoughts away. She's probably already arguing with O'Clerdon again.
Certainly.
But that doesn't fit the timeline, right?
It doesn't. It has to be someone else.
I crossed my arms and tried to think.
The mark seems to have developed for about 3 weeks, if that helps.
Immediately, one death sprung to mind. Eric? The Mason's son?
Why are you looking at me like I can say yes or no?
Right. You wouldn't know him.
Did he die around that time?
He did. He died in a bar fight about 3 weeks ago. He took a bad blow to the head, and his brain bled out on the table.
Was he a friend?
No, just a neighbor. He had a less than pleasant personality. I tried to be polite and avoid him mostly.
Avoid him? Does that mean he tried to talk to you?
I nodded. He never crossed the line, so I didn't think too much about it. We did get into an argument the day he died, though.
He certainly seems like our culprit.
Did you put a whole apple curse on me, dude? Jeez!
If he had a one-sided attraction to you, it could explain the curse being a plague.
How?
Obsessive jealousy to make sure no one else would want you after his death.
Oh, okay. I let out a disgusted noise.
It's quite common for lust-based curse marks to be plagues due to that sentiment.
Vile.
It is.
I shuddered and felt my skin crawl. I wasn't attracted to him at all. I thought I made it clear, too.
Some men are too stupid to take the hint, even if you hit them with it.
Speaking from experience?
Of course. I'm not ugly. That's the only real limitation for a man of my status back home.
He surprisingly didn't sound smug, just matter-of-fact. I chewed on the revelation. All it takes is one a-hole to ruin your life. And he doesn't even have to be alive to do it. How does that even happen?
Do you really want to know?
Yes, I do. I do.
Death is too proud.
I gave him a confused look. He explained further.
He refuses to create helpers to make it easier to gather souls. Meaning human souls are able to linger on this realm, unseen but still problematic.
Oh.
Since their soul can taint others around it.
So this is... I dropped my voice to a whisper. The god of death's fault? I waited for some kind of divine bolt to find me. None came. Heimos surprised me by laughing. He had a surprisingly soft laugh.
I assure you, he can't reach you here. Call him whatever you like, curse his name even. He holds no power here. But yes, it is partially his fault. Of course, the other part lies in the wicked heart of the human who left the curse. It is true that he only had the chance due to death's arrogance, though.
That is a horrifying thought. The sound of birds' wings flapping interrupted our conversation. Heimos watched as a raven landed, depositing a small scroll case on his desk. He scowled darkly at it. Ooh. Bad news?
No, an annoying sender. It's never a good thing when he writes to me. Frankly, the letter itself might be dangerous. It'd be safest if you left now.
Are you in any danger? Heimos just stared at me for a moment. Immortal. Right. Sorry. You're actually immortal.
We can talk more later if you so desire. For now, please leave.
He cautiously approached the scroll case. I could see he was keeping an eye on me at the same time. I will. Thank you for answering my questions.
It's not a problem.
Gosh darn it. So I'm cursed because I had a stalker. Great. I felt better having some answers about what was going on. There was no way I could tell Derek what his son had done to me from the grave. It would absolutely shatter him, and he was already broken after losing Eric. I knew that I would need to go kick Eric's gravestone when I got home. If I got home! It was less than the a-hole deserved for this mess, but it would make me feel better. Because of you, all of my anime figures got burnt! I just couldn't let Derek catch me. I sat down on the furred bench and sighed. There were many things I needed to think about regarding home. At least now I have the time to do it. The Sacrarium had more space inside than I had imagined. A network of dark hallways crawled through the mountain. I was free to go to many places, but there were a few that Heimos forbade me from entering. I didn't mind the limitations. There was a small garden to enjoy, full of fruits and vegetables. The bathing room mercifully had hot water. One thing I noticed quickly was that there wasn't much to do. Heimos had himself buried behind a wall of books at any point in time. For me, there was no immediate equivalent. I tried to find things to do. I just couldn't spend the next few weeks bored out of my mind. Eventually, Heimos noticed my restlessness. Hey Heimos, why don't you teach me some magic?
Bored?
A little.
I don't have much in the way of entertainment.
I've noticed.
It's not like I get many guests here.
Heimos pointed out the fact with a wry half-smile. His mood sobered quickly.
Agitation and restlessness are bad for recovery. What did you do back home?
Worked, mostly. Spoke with my friends.
What was your job?
I am a baker. I refuse to talk about my profession in the past tense.
I don't know how much you can bake here, but if you want to try, you can.
Do you even have an oven? What do you eat? Well, I guess fruits and vegetables.
I do. The larger concern is that I have no animal products, except for eggs.
My mind was already excited at the prospect of getting to bake again. Eggs? You got eggs? That's all I need. I can work around that. Where's this oven?
Over this way.
You got some wheat? I could do some damage with some eggs and some wheat. Heimos led me to the tapestry that hid the kitchen from the main antechamber. The kitchen was a tight, crowded space for Heimos alone. With two of us in here, we were practically touching. Heimos pushed aside some beads dangling and revealed another tiny room. It had an oven tucked into a wall. Shelves shouldn't be this close to an oven.
I don't often bake. Move things however you wish. Just be careful not to hurt yourself.
I will. I didn't offer to give him some. What kind of monster are you? A man makes you immortal and you won't give him some bread? I'll make sure to bring you a slice of whatever I make. As thanks, of course.
It's my kitchen, so I would hope so.
It might not taste good at first. I need to see what I have to work with.
I doubt it'll be any worse than what I eat normally.
I excitedly began to focus on what I could do. It felt good to have my hands busy again. Even with my new forms of entertainment, my thoughts strayed to home often. Every time, new rage would fill me. No matter how I sliced it, I couldn't find a single excuse I was willing to accept. I also felt angry for those who went down with me. Exorcisms were always hard on the body. It made me furious to know that they were punished for doing the right thing. I shook my head and got up from where I was sketching to pass the time. My body needed to move, so I stepped out of the bedroom. To my surprise, Heimos wasn't in his library. He sat on the ground in front of the fire, watching it with heavy-lidded eyes. His hands were idly knitting something. A few of the ravens had gathered on his lap. "Oh, I want to knit in front of a fire while some ravens gather on my lap." Blue Eyes lazily trailed over to me when the door shut behind me.
What?
"You knit?"
You don't?
He didn't sound accusatory, merely curious. No, not really. Edith knits most of my things."
Interesting. Knitting and sewing were required skills for everyone in Mordewell.
Yeah, in fact, I think with the way the world is, stuff like growing your own food and knitting and making clothes is a thing that a lot of people should learn. Today. Right now. He turned his attention back to his work. I wasn't sure if I necessarily wanted to talk about knitting. I was sure I didn't want to talk about home, and Heimos seemed open to talking. I walked over and sat down on the bench, keeping some space between us. Heimos didn't react to my presence. Why was it required?
We all had to learn a lot of basic skills in case we get separated from the caravan.
The Mordo really traveled by constant caravan? Many scholars argued over that. Some thought it was impossible for people to constantly keep on the move in a near tundra. Others thought that claiming otherwise contradicted all evidence.
It was necessary. We had to follow our food, in more ways than one.
Oh?
Earth elementals would make pockets of unfrozen land. We would gather around these pockets for a season or two to grow crops.
Oh.
Then it would be used up, and we would need to find the next one. It was a hard life, but it was ours.
Heimos sighed.
I even made sure to reduce the freeze to make gardens more common.
Excuse me? I blinked at him.
What?
You can't casually mention affecting the weather in an entire region like that.
It's simple enough to do if you have the power.
The human in me wanted to hit him for making it sound so simple. I decided to focus on clarifying things to avoid smacking the back of his head. What do you mean you can control the weather? Smack. You're why Andatal can farm now? The Emperor saw the change in weather as proof of the divine favoring his ascension.
Well, that is a disgusting thought. It was certainly not the gods who did it. It was me. I wanted to make their lives easier. Vile cretin brat.
His knitting needles moved faster with his annoyance. Are you referring to the first emperor as a brat? He was a young upstart, a folk legend, and hero to those in the Empire.
A sniveling, arrogant brat, yes. I had the displeasure of meeting him once. I should have killed him.
Heimos sighed.
Things are always clear in hindsight.
They are. I'm glad that you didn't kill the first emperor, though. I mean, would I even exist if you had?
Fair point.
I was surprised he conceded that.
What emperor is your empire on now?
The 10th, mostly because the 4th and 8th emperors died young.
It's always strange to hear about the passage of time.
It must feel like an eternity.
It doesn't, which is why it feels weird.
It doesn't? I already felt like a small century had passed despite it only being a few days.
I am not aware of time passing unless a human is in proximity, due to the fact time herself ignores me.
Could you expand on that a bit more? He had a bad habit of skipping over relevant information.
The goddess of time removed me from her awareness.
Oh.
Her awareness is what causes humans to be aware of time passing.
It seems that the goddess of time doesn't visit millennials either, because I think 20 years ago was the 90s.
Her awareness is why you know how many minutes have passed, and how soon it is until your next task.
She doesn't cause us to age physically?
That is her husband, death. His awareness causes the human body to decay. Together they cause age and injury. Perfect immortality is when both of them are unaware of you.
Like you? Heimos nodded.
Like me.
Ooh. What's with that face, brother?
For me, only 2 years have passed due to the number of guests I've had. During your stay here, I will be aware of a month passing by. During your stay here, I will be aware of the month passing by. When you leave, I will be none the wiser once more.
He spoke about it so casually, so calmly, that I almost didn't process the extra layer of tragedy. To Heimos, he had only been away from his people for 2 years. Oh, what? My sympathy died quickly. Why do I have the option to be so mean? That's horrible. I'm so sorry. Heimos gave me a faint, sad smile.
It is a mercy, in a way. The mortal mind cannot withstand eternity. We break eventually. Not being aware of time is why I'm still sane.
That only helps so much. I mean, dang. If I found out my people were dead after only 2 years passing. I shook my head. How are you so calm?
Do I look calm to you?
And he's actually twitching.
My profession required perfect emotional control at all times. I feel the pain deeply, but there is always work to be done.
That's a sad way to live.
It is.
Heimos shrugged. A heavy pause lingered in the air.
I doubt you came out to talk about my woes. What brought you out here?
I fought the urge to sigh as he deflected the focus back onto me. Home.
Home?
I can't stop thinking about it.
It's a common train of thought.
I just keep getting so angry. I wonder if that would have changed if earlier on I had chose to feel sad instead of angry, because that was kind of messed up, folks. That was kind of messed up what you did, but then again, the guards were pointing arrows at everyone. I clenched my fists on my lap. I can't wrap my head around this. Then I feel stupid I didn't see it coming, and that makes me even angrier.
No one expects to be stabbed in the back by loved ones.
I should have known better. Frostine was always cutthroat under the fluffy mountain folk exterior. It shouldn't have been surprising when they did this to me. Heimos sat his knitting down.
Espoir. That kind of thinking is unproductive. You can obsess over what you should have done, what they should have done. They will do nothing for you. That will do nothing for you.
What should I do then?
Think about revenge or justice, probably. Going back frothing at the mouth won't help your case. Take that rage and forge it into an argument to match theirs.
You're encouraging me to take revenge? I knew there was something I liked about you, Heimos.
Yes, revenge is often the second result after justice failed.
I like that line. I like that line a lot. I like the way you think, Heimos.
Besides, I'm petty.
I knew I liked you, Heimos. I sniffed disdainfully.
I know I would let them have heck if they did something like this to me. It would be hypocritical for me to advocate otherwise.
I see. I still felt angry, but I could see his point. I have to make sure this can't happen again.
Then you should build an argument and a plan to make sure it doesn't.
I will. After that, Heimos and I idly chatted for a bit longer. We mostly talked about Andatal versus Morderwale, comparing and contrasting our lives. Heimos was a walking, talking history book, and I made sure to ask some important questions. Heimos surprised me by asking me about the history he had missed. Our casual conversation turned into a history lecture of sorts. I didn't have time to grow bored, though. Heimos had to leave to tend to something. What about that letter that you got? That was dangerous. What was going on there? Frankly, it was surprising to see him not working for as long as I had. The exchange had been soothing, in a way. I never expected him to validate my anger. It felt good to know at least one other person thought I was right to be furious. It helped me settle a little more comfortably into my temporary stay. I had something to do to keep myself occupied. I enjoyed the challenge of baking with limited items. The first few things I made were absolutely horrible, but I learnt from them. I wondered if I would be able to apply this information to future shortages. Heimos allowed me as much paper as I wanted, so I was free to take notes and make recipes. Heimos himself seemed vaguely interested in what I was doing from time to time. Aww. We discussed my craft for a little bit each time he poked his head in. It was a peaceful existence. The only consistent thing in the Sacrarium was my medication dosage. Heimos was very careful to make sure each dose arrived on time.
If that curse does what I think it does, you absolutely cannot miss a dose.
What do you think it does?
Rampant fever, constant nausea, muscle spasms, migraine, and probably hallucinations.
Ooh.
On the gentler end of things.
I stared at him. And the worst end?
I don't think you'd want to breathe with how much pain you'd be in. Honestly, even though it's a plague curse by technicality, I'd call it a suicide curse. It's that malicious.
Ugh. Gee, thanks, Eric. Ugh, never gonna forgive Eric for this. I shuddered.
Don't worry, I won't let you suffer needlessly.
Thank you. I was relieved that Heimos took his job so seriously.
Do notify me if your condition changes at all. It shouldn't, but if it does, I will do something about it swiftly.
I thought I was suspended in time.
You are, but curses are tricky things. Be cautious.
I nodded. Heimos went to continue with his duties, and I returned to trying to pass the time. The Sacrarium had really become pleasant enough to stay in, like an inn of sorts. Heimos knocked on the door to the bedroom. Yes? He let himself in. To my surprise, he had a staff of light gray wood and ice in one hand. He had a satchel resting comfortably on one shoulder.
I need to step out for a bit, so do not be surprised if you do not see me.
He had my full attention now. For how long? Heimos paused. I could see his face flicker and twist in a way that indicated he needed to explain something.
A few hours.
He sounded uncertain.
That could be a problem.
Isn't my next dose of medicine soon?
That is the problem at hand.
Maybe you could make some before you leave.
No, I don't think it should take that long.
Heimos frowned.
It might be best if you come with me, just in case.
That makes sense. We going on a field trip? I did not want to find out how painful my curse could be without his intervention. I pulled on my outer layers quickly and followed him outside. Heimos stepped outside of his home with no shoes on. Isn't that cold?
I don't feel the cold anymore.
In hindsight, the fact that parts of his body were obviously frostbitten should have made that obvious. Still, isn't it bad for your feet?
I will be fine. My body prefers the cold anyways.
Then why is your home warm?
Because my mind prefers it warm.
There's a difference between your body and your mind?
Of course there is. Nostalgia.
Heimos walked with his back straight. Heimos made sure to keep close to me. He wandered a bit too far on occasion, but he always paused to let me catch up. What do you need to do? It had to be important if it managed to pull him away from his library.
2 things.
Heimos gestured to the trees around us.
I need to check on some of these.
He pointed up the mountain to where the ring of dark, angry clouds continued to gather.
I need to deal with that.
He spoke about it like it was his neighbor's annoying dog. That's not your creation? He looked offended at the notion.
No. That is a lot of devils trying to make the gate bigger.
Why would they need to make the gate bigger? Can't they already get through?
Lesser devils, yes. The big ones, no. The gate is too small for them to cross.
So they're trying to let in their leaders? Heimos nodded. Oh, we don't want that to happen.
Which would be catastrophic. I maintain a shield to try and keep them contained here. Obviously, the stronger ones can still force their way through when I'm not looking. If they extend the gate, more powerful ones would flood out. I would have to spend each day reinforcing the shield and purging devils.
He grumbled at the very idea.
I have better things to do than fight a never-ending war. So I strive to keep the gate as small as possible.
I stared at him.
What?
Shouldn't the gods be doing this? Heimos grimaced.
This is not their fault. It's mine, so I need to take responsibility for it.
I see.
I imagine if the gate ever did extend, they would intervene. For now, preventative measures are obviously preferred.
So our yearly blizzards aren't just because you're cranky? The comment slipped out before I could stop it. Heimos stopped walking and turned to look at me.
Excuse me?
Whoops. Well, we call that, I pointed up at the clouds, Heimos' wrath. We thought it was you upset with us.
What? Why? Mortals are dumb.
It's not our fault we don't know what's going on here. You aren't exactly famous for being welcoming.
I am very welcoming when people follow the customs correctly.
Heimos continued walking. Customs?
The custom of the responsible host. It is from Mordawa. How do you not know this? You did it.
I thought about it for a moment. The offering?
Yes.
That's just what the legends say we need to do to not get struck by lightning after setting foot on Mount Gelus.
That is the customary greeting of a guest in my culture. Not some fairy tale. In Mordawa, those in need of hospitality offer up something of importance to them. It can be coin, but usually it's things like family heirlooms. It's meant to be an extension of faith. I won't harm you and yours because you hold this piece of me now.
Aw, that's sweet.
Though, I suppose that explains why you offered blood.
Is that not an offering choice?
Seriously, what am I going to do with some of your blood? I can't put that on my mantle. No, it's rude. To offer blood is to say, you should have helped me before now.
I winced. Well, how was I supposed to know that? I'm a dumb human. I didn't know that.
I've realized that now.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Is that why you helped me? I followed an old custom?
Yes.
That's it?
I also swore an oath to tend to the sick and injured. Both my oath and the custom are traditions before the gods.
Heimos stopped talking for a moment.
The gods mean nothing to me, but the oaths and the emotions behind them do.
He looked at me out of the corner of his eye.
I do not break my word if I can avoid it. When I accepted your offering, that was an oath. Thus, I will see this through.
Thank you.
It is my duty.
Heimos spoke those words again. At first, I thought those were empty words to calm a panicked human. Now, I saw that they were renewals of an oath. You're kinder than people give you credit for. Heimos let out a strangled noise of confusion.
Pardon?
His cheeks were faintly pink. Oh, I made the deity blush. You know, most people think you're some greedy, cold-hearted miser up here. His blush faded into an eye roll.
Thank you so much.
You aren't, though. You're surprisingly kind.
Surprisingly.
Well, I mean, most stories about you aren't favorable, because you're an affront to the church. He looked oddly smug about that last comment.
That is true. Despite what they say, I was a mortal first.
I can see that now.
Should I be offended?
I was worried for a moment until I realized he was teasing me. You are a butt sometimes.
It is amusing to watch you panic.
Sadist.
Only sometimes.
I swatted his arm out of habit. It was a common gesture back home. Real fear pulsed through me when I realized what I had done. I worried it was a step too far. It broke when he just laughed at the display. I relaxed immediately. Smiling and a little pink-faced, Heimos spoke again, softly.
Thank you.
I wondered how long it had been since someone called him kind. Not a problem. Heimos and I continued to talk after that during the walk. The conversation wove around different things, but it was warm and engaging. Heimos moved around the mountain with purpose. Periodically, he would pause to examine one of the black trees. He never stepped too close while taking his notes. He also drew some vials from his satchel and tossed them at the trees. They shattered, and a liquid poured onto them. The trees writhed and shrieked at that. Ugh.
Another failure.
Heimos sighed. Each time the vials didn't do what they were supposed to, his face darkened. I'm sorry. Heimos looked up from his journal to raise a brow at me. That it isn't going well. You look disappointed. Heimos tapped his quill on the page of his journal for a moment or two.
I am. I should be used to it by now.
He sighed.
Do not worry about me.
He closed the book.
But thank you.
Eventually, our long walk took us to a break in the trees. A field of perfect snow rested before us.
Wait by the tree line. The magic will be intense if you are too close.
Heimos set the satchel with his journal down beside me.
Keep an eye on this. Don't open it.
Sure. Heimos walked away from me. I kept an eye on the bag. Heimos stepped out into the field of snow and began to trace something into the ground with his staff. He stepped carefully while carving out a runic circle, methodically and precisely. I watched in awe as blue light emerged from the ground. The energy drifted upwards and began to spin a web. It was like watching layers of glassy energy form a shell. Then a smaller one would form in the next layer inwards. In the end, Heimos stood in the center of at least 10 different webs of magic. I could practically taste it, like alcohol and cinnamon, and something otherworldly rested on my tongue. Heimos struck the ground with his staff. The vibration it sent out sent me falling to my knees. I felt it echo within my body, and I shook under its intensity. I looked up from the snow to watch as he began to draw symbols in the air with his hands. Power swirled through the mountain, and for the first time, the winds made noise. It almost felt like a void had been opened up in that field, calling all matter of life to flow inwards. With a thunderous clap, the energy shattered. The shells around Heimos surged forward and away from him. I watched it race up the mountainside faster than my mind could follow. Finally, my mind recognized the shapes. It was like a small army of men and women made of wind and snow. The second that army collided with the ring of dark energy, a roar of defiance could be heard. The light forced its way inside, and a battle of wills occurred then. Heimos held both hands forward. I couldn't make out his expression due to the snow surrounding him. For 10 painfully slow heartbeats, the battle raged on. The sounds of glass shattering forced me to cover my ears. I watched as the clouds turned gray and began to roll down the mountain. Heimos' wrath would now fall across Andatal. I never thought I'd see a natural phenomenon be born in front of me. My life really had taken a turn for the strange. Heimos' shoulders were slumped when he walked towards me. He actually looked a bit winded.
We are done.
His voice had a slight wheeze to it. Do you need to take a moment?
No, we should hurry back. Your medicine should be done brewing.
He grabbed his bag and slung it over his shoulder. This time, he leaned on his staff while walking. He didn't have the energy to talk on the way back, so I held back my questions. We just barely managed to reach the Sacrarium before the blizzard hit.
I need to settle down.
Heimos still looked fatigued. It was surprising. I never thought I'd see you look tired. He gave me a weak glare.
I just fought off over 3,000 devils. I am allowed to be fatigued.
My eyes widened at the number. That many?
That many.
Any doubt I had in his power faded then.
I'm going to rest. Please refrain from too much noise.
He drifted off to his library. I felt tired after the walk myself. Despite Heimos' care, I was still technically sick. My nap turned into me falling asleep completely. It felt strange to realize how much time had passed. It passed surprisingly quickly. I had thought I'd spend my days staring holes into the wall and counting each second. Instead, I had a handful of things to do and someone to talk to. Sometimes I would seek him out and ask him things. Other times, he would come to me to pass the time while waiting for something to process. Mordawell did have alchemy?
Absolutely. It was required for survival.
I see. Is your medicine more alchemy than medicine, or...?
A mixture. Some medicine lacks magic, some has it. It depends on the medicine, the patient, and the situation.
Does mine have magic in it?
Yes, I'm using an alchemical mixture instead of a usual painkiller. If I gave you that like normal, you'd be comatose.
Ooh. Well, you might appreciate the silence.
Surprisingly, I've found myself enjoying these conversations, so I wouldn't.
I blinked at him in surprise.
It's not like there's anyone else for miles. Besides this, all I have are letters, and my pen pals can take forever to write back.
You have pen pals? He nodded. Really?
Really? No, I won't talk about them.
Aw. I pouted at that.
A later time, perhaps.
Fine, fine. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Week 2. Heimos was a character for sure. Not in the way the church portrayed him. It was kind of funny how fast the intrigue and awe of a legend could fade when you were around him a lot. Sometimes Heimos was that being of legend, powerful, scary, and inhuman. Most of the time, he walked into walls because he refused to put his book down and let ravens play with his hair. I never expected a living god to be clumsy of all things, but Heimos had plenty of bruises to prove otherwise. He was kind of cute. In a bumbling, overly stoic kind of way.
Espoir.
Heimos called out to me from his library door. Yes, Heimos? He poked his head out into the main antechamber.
Are you doing anything right now?
Nothing important. What's up?
I need to go back out into the forest again.
I understood what he meant immediately. We gotta fight 1,000 demons again? He needed me to come with him, or else he might lose track of time. Given how big Mount Gelus is, he could easily be gone for weeks.
Is it all right if we go soon?
Oh, yeah, sure. Another cozy walk together, then? I'm starting to think these might just be excuses to see me. I expected a quip or a bit of biting sarcasm. Instead, Heimos' cheeks faintly turned pink.
What? No, no. He looked away from me then, scratching at his face.
Aww.
It is something I need to do, and I do have valid concerns.
He shook his head a bit before frowning at me.
You are teasing me with my awkwardness.
My brief bit of shock faded into laughter. His cheeks continued to remain pink.
It is not funny. You caught me off guard.
I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to get flustered. His frown darkened into an embarrassed scowl. I felt a little bit bad then.
It has been a long time, even before I was imprisoned.
He crossed his arms defensively.
I need to gather a few things. We'll leave soon.
I couldn't resist. And wait for your cheeks to stop being pink? He let out a strangled noise and disappeared back into his library. That had been really cute. Heimos carried an odd crystal in one hand, his staff in the other. I was curious about it. Is that staff magical?
Not on its own. It is just to help me cast larger spells without hurting myself.
You can hurt yourself with your own magic?
Very easily.
I wondered if that was why all mages had staves, but it felt like a redundant question. I tried to get a better look at the odd crystal. What's that? Another thing to help with magic? Heimos shifted the crystal a little further away from me. All I could see was that it was a mixture of white and light blue. It seemed to have flowers of ice growing out of it.
It's a bunch of spells packed together to break another spell. We call them spellbreakers. This one is meant to break a specific curse.
Heimos paused.
The panacea put into this was used up a while before you arrived. If I had had one when you had came to my mountain, you would be at home already.
It's okay. I figured it was something like that. Beyond the fact Heimos was too nice to do something so cruel, he was too practical to keep me around longer than necessary. Can I look at it? Heimos hesitantly shifted the crystal closer to me. The light blue portion was a perfectly smooth orb that swirled with runes and power. A crust of white crystal clung to patches of it. From this crust, flowers made of ice grew and shifted in the wind. It's pretty.
Don't say that.
What? Why?
For those who use magic, our magic is an extension of ourselves. It's like calling me pretty. I know you don't mean to do that, which makes it awkward.
Well, I mean, you are pretty. Perfect, since you're pretty too. I probably should not flirt with the living god. Heimos blinked at me a few times.
I mean, I am aware that I am.
Your humility is even prettier. Heimos rolled his eyes at me.
I believe false humility to be a tactic used to soothe an inferiority complex, which I do not have.
Heimos paused.
You're pretty too, I suppose.
You suppose? Heimos stubbornly refused to look down at me then.
You are.
I almost didn't hear him. Thanks. He huffed a bit. Thank you for showing it to me. He really seemed to be out of his comfort zone in doing so.
It is not a problem.
Heimos led the way after that. Periodically, he would pause and turn to glare at something. Only once he seemed satisfied that whatever he saw had left, would he start walking again. Just glares down a demon hiding in the trees. Devils?
Yes.
I shivered. Am I in danger?
While I'm around, never.
The devils didn't seem to want to pick a fight with Heimos today, at least. I wondered if they were still weak after the blizzards tore them apart. Heimos did keep an active eye on our surroundings. He only got distracted when a particular black tree came into view.
Stay back. Near this gray tree.
Heimos patted the tree in question. It shuddered a bit, stretching and flexing its branches. The motion reminded me of a yawn.
She will keep you safe while I'm preoccupied.
I nodded and stood next to the gray tree. It was warm to rest against. What are you going to do?
Cast a spell that will probably fail. It shouldn't take that long.
Heimos then stepped away from me and went to the large black tree. Like all the other black trees, it began to writhe upon sensing someone getting close. To my horror, Heimos didn't react or stop it when it wrapped sharp, thorny branches around him. He stubbornly continued forward, ignoring the damage being done to him.
Must you always be so combative?
He grumbled to himself. I watched as he pressed the strange crystal into the tree. The tree then screamed. It was ear-piercing and raw. My hands clapped over my ears, and I felt the other black trees scream in response to the first one. I struggled to keep one eye open to observe what was happening. Nothing could be heard over the screaming, but I could watch as Heimos seemed to break the crystal on the tree. He then guided the resulting light that exploded out of it around the tree. It continued to scream and fight him the entire time. I was forced to close my eyes when the light surged. Nothing but screaming could be heard for a bit. Then, silence.